Okay, we're going. All right, so Eddie, I'll just go through an opening thing. We're here with Eddie at the Joint Physio in Courtney, BC. Eddie's the owner of the Joint for the past 5 or 6 years?
5 years. 6 years almost.
Joint is a very progressive and unique clinic, not only being an early adopter of EMR, but also an adopter of a fairly unique vendor system within the physiotherapy world. Eddie has extensively researched EMR systems here on the island, and we've just got a few questions for you, Eddie. So first off, what are your general thoughts about physiotherapy and electronic medical record usage?
Yeah, I think we're behind. I think we're behind, and I think there's some reasons for that. I think financial reasons for where a lot of clinics are is a question of return on investment.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a changeover to the guard
Mm-hmm.
based on just demographics throughout Canada,
Mm-hmm.
and however, I think this is a great time for a lot of the new therapists to step in.
Mm.
I we're behind, scary, but I think it's just the new group could understand it much better.
Yeah, coming through. So you've been using the electronic charting for a while. You've been using Oscar medical record system as well as the clinic management system. What benefits does using an EMR provide to the efficiency of your clinic?
Yeah. So the EMR that we have is a web-based EMR.
Mm-hmm.
So that means it is actually accessible through the internet from any location. So one of the first benefits of that is I can access my information from anywhere, good and bad.
Yeah.
So I'm on holidays, I can still access my information.
Yeah.
So that's kind of crappy that way. But so that's probably one of the first one. B, legibility.
Yeah.
I think that would probably be a big factor.
Mm-hmm.
Sharing notes. We can standardize reports, we can standardize assessments, and it's easier to get information quicker, faster, less, which is a real factor when you're trying to understand the care of a process. We can create templates quickly so that we can create a streamlined thinking process, which is important. And yet there's a lot of room for custom care, so the therapist can do their own thing. And I think for me as well, is the speed in which I can type.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big reasons why with paper charting that I found it a hassle was that my handwriting was actually physically too slow compared to the amount of information I can put down, and I can capture a lot of data and a lot of information within that time span. So I think that's given me a lot of opportunity too, and with our particular EMR we can utilize the technology to actually create a chart that's actually more robust. Based on our format, we can actually add links really easily, we can add media, we can add a lot of information, and we can see a lot of information on our patients so that the actually format of the EMR is no longer simply just a document, but it actually can be a learning resource. That is another element of it. And then again, we keep statistics as part of our as part of the assessment, is that when the patient comes in, part of our first thing is like, what region are we treating? So something as simple as like, we're using the ICD-9 codes. So even just simply coding our injury gives us a way to look back at our data. Even if it's not the most sophisticated amount of data, we could look back and say, hey, last year we saw 40% backs, which is significant. It's simple, but it's significant in terms of what paper could offer.
And if you think about the quality of the care that you provide. So a lot of those things we looked at just a minute ago while you were talking about were efficiency. If you looked at the quality of the care you can provide, would you say that's improved over the paper charting that you used to do? Not at this clinic, but in previous jobs.
I think with therapists, like the direct hands-on care in terms of quality and the soft skills quality, I don't necessarily think it will change that so much. But what it does help, though, is helps assist the therapist potentially enhance their clinical reasoning elements of it. So one of the things I really like is that the efficiency in which we can create assessment templates. So if we haven't seen a TMJ or something like that, or we have a particular odd or interesting case, we can actually create resources where we can quickly draw upon that. And actually having a computer on hand, I think, again, to answer that quality element of it, it's quite good because rapidly using Google Images, we can, without any extra software and showing the patients that they can actually do this, we can often educate really quickly and show patients the difference between good resources and bad resources. When they're out there in the Google world, getting themselves into trouble with some information that may not be applicable to them.
Yeah.
So I think from the educational standpoint and from the efficiency and also from remembering, because we can have photos of them, there are all those little elements that enhance the kind of like the value added experience and care, but it also helps the thinking process and hopefully the adequate response for physios.
Excellent.
It all depends on how they use it, though.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Having used EMR for about 5 years now, you're pretty experienced with it. What would you say some of the biggest challenges are?
Yeah, technology, backups, redundancies, catastrophic failures, wireless servers going down, servers blowing up. All these things. We have our information backed up on 5 different servers, 4 different locations. Yeah. That's geographically is really critical. We're looking at the requirements for us to keep files for that long. So having information that is backed up is really important. Technological failures are the most obvious thing that we become problematic. But through our experience, you start developing backups, and we still have paper charts in case that if there is a failure, we have our notes. We pull them up. Boom. We start an assessment. We stack those later, and then we input them at a later date. But yeah, I would say those are some of the biggest headaches. Knowing that you're actually reliant on other people to make sure the software is great. Right. The threat of the access to your information or a loss of that information that might not be within your control is something that is some of the challenges that you have to factor in. So
for your actual physios, how do they find the charting? Have they been resistant to charting electronically, or do they get on the bus pretty quick?
It's interesting. We've most of my physios, I've got them from scratch, so they brand new grads. So the computer interface has been no big deal. When I was interviewing for the jobs, the people that were most interested actually in the EMR were actually the newer generation. With the older physios, I tried to draw that as a sell point. It didn't register as much. It was kind of fascinating. It was like, oh yeah, it's whatever. I'm like, oh no, this is super awesome. And their response was like, yeah, I guess it's okay. We brought in a couple seasoned therapists who kind of had their process, and some of their initial concerns was I can't type fast enough, and their concerns were alleviated. They actually can get the information quicker than they think, because we can do things like create templates, and we can, our thinking process, we can have these ways of putting information in quickly and shortcuts and key phrases that we can define easily. And they got brought into it. I think they actually quite enjoy it. They like the fact that at the end of the day, they don't need to stay in the clinic. Their shift is 7 hours or 6 hours. They go home, they can punch them out. And Bob's your uncle. We don't have to deal with everybody looking at paperwork, so that's been great. No charts disappearing offshore. So we're good.
Offsite,
offsite,
do you ever get tempted to go back to paper charting?
We'll never go back to paper charting. Only as a backup.
Excellent. The logistics. What do you guys use for actually doing your charts? What kind of hardware?
The logistics.
And I'm thinking more of the input logistics, like a laptop versus tablet versus.
Yeah. You know what? It's really quite fascinating. We are using web-based EMR, and its language is actually, its operating system is in Linux, which is some people may know or not know it. But the interesting thing about it, web-based, that people who use PCs or people who use Macs can both access information. So it's, if you have a web browser, if it can handle a web browser, it can manage it. So we have a huge array of laptops kicking around the clinic. We have a server, and we need, from the server, it goes to our wireless router, and that wireless router, we have 2 different ways. We have a wireless router, and we also actually have it wired within the clinic as well. So just in case the wireless router fails, our front end especially has a direct main line into the server. So that's totally safe. And after that, sometimes we still have to have some admin things that people sign in with and paperwork. And we actually have that information laminated, the forms laminated, and they just pop it through this, what's called a scan snap. It's it's an awesome scanner. Rapidly, it'll scan both sides quickly, and that information will be put in. We also have a small camera that we can take photos of the clients when they come in, And then I think that's about it. We have the within the space. I think technologically we had to set up some just some wiring systems where each room, some of the rooms were wired just in case we need to go.
Yeah.
We can't. The wireless system doesn't work, but we actually never use that. So that was one of the things.
And I've seen around the clinic you've got some rolling carts, and that's basically how you transport the laptops.
Yeah, like different therapists will use like they therapists. I have some therapists who love the iPads, so they love iPads. I do have some carts that will roll. We have some people just like carrying their laptops. So I think it's nice because depending on how you work, you can
There's some flexibility
there.
You
can customize it for your needs. Yeah.
Excellent. What tips would you give to clinics thinking of going into that whole world of electronic charting?
Oh, talk to people.
Yeah.
Talk to people.
Yeah.
Try not to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of people who just don't take what the vendors offer.
Yeah.
There's lots of software. There are challenges with every software, and some software were designed with more the billing part in mind and the clinical elements second. Other parts have been designed with the clinical elements first and the billing and business side second. So some of them are great in some areas and not so great in the others, and to find out what the solutions are for you. So yeah, I think almost everybody who's migrated to an EMR would have had growing pains and would have had real issues. So talk to people, try to interview people, ask them what the pros and cons are. Some people are tinkerers like myself who like to get into the guts and customize and mess around with things. Other people just want it to look good and function well and no fuss and will not go into the back end and make sure that the information is taken care of. And some software offers that as well. So those are, I would say that's probably the most important part. There's enough people out there now who have kind of played around with it and for a number of years that I think it's really important that therapists now kind of talk to and utilize the network that's existing.
Yeah.
Because it is important for people to kind of review cost benefits of using an EMR and it does when you transfer into that such a significant change, there is a kind of a long-term commitment. I think that's valuable. Yeah. Very important to put into it. Yeah.
Good, great. One more question for you. Just getting back to the big picture, in what ways do you think physiotherapists can leverage EMR to their advantage in the future, both as individual clinics and as a profession?
I think the number one reason why EMRs we should really investigate the use or value or integration into our profession. Definitely looking at being able to obtain data. I think that the importance now, as I mentioned earlier, we talk about evidence-based practice, but it's like, where's the evidence? And if we can create systems or ways to, and formats to at least start looking at developing methodologies to start getting this information so that we can really demonstrate to ourselves or even to our clients or even just long-term of the effectiveness of what our care is. So I think that the biggest part is that in our care we need to really start looking at what are the outcomes with what we're doing and what is it that we're trying to achieve as therapists, and I think that if we can look at that, that would be the biggest idealistic opportunity that we can take advantage of as we grow forward as a profession. Yeah.
You mentioned to me earlier that you looked at your 10-year stack of paper charts and all the information you could not access.
Yeah, it's lost information. It's it was difficult to look at that and say I don't even know how many arms I looked at, or I can't even reflect back on it really easily. And I think it's quite interesting when we look at my clinic history. I could look at week 1 and see that I had 4 people that week, and I could actually dive into their charts and look at these characteristics, and I could see patterns of how really easily just visually see the referral pattern changes, the caseload changes really quickly, and have relatively rapid data, even from the business perspective of how things are operating. And so from a private practice standpoint as well, you can get a better impression of what's happening, which is, I think, important. I mean, the world's getting much more competitive. There are a lot of people out there who are challenging our domain as movement specialists, which they are not. And I think from the academic and the professional development side, I think they're powerful, but also from the business side of being able to utilize information to our advantage is really critical.
Yeah, fantastic.
Cool.
Eddie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'm sure the information will be very useful
Yeah.
to your colleagues. So
Awesome.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.